the Radio Society of Great Britain is proud to sponsor TX Factor. Hello and welcome to episode 28 of TX Factor. It's been a while, but we're pleased to be back, safe and sound. In this episode, Bob and Mike get to grips with assembling an MMDVM voice modem with Pi-Star, and Bob is so excited to review the new ID-52 5-watt handheld transceiver from Icom. And yes, a free-to-enter giveaway draw is back with a bundle of books courtesy of our sponsor, the RSGB. More details later. But first, it's down to Devon, and there's some construction about to begin.
Hello and welcome to a how-to from Mike Marsh, G1IAR, and me, Bob McCready, G0FGX from the TX Factor crew to talk digital modes and how you can get onto them the most economic way. Now, Mike, first of all, these days, the digital modes almost get thrown in with any radio you buy, don't they?
Yeah, except that with a radio that you buy, you're stuck with either Fusion, D-Star or DMR. So whichever model of radio you buy is only one mode.
And people might have a bit of mix and match in their shack. So they might have an Icom radio that does D-Star, they might have a Yaesu radio that does Fusion, and DMR is very popular, so there's some really economically priced DMR mobiles around. Definitely. So that's great. We've got all those different modes. No repeaters near me. What do I do?
So you are a little bit stuck if you've not got a repeater or people locally to talk to. What you do then is go, I want to talk to somebody, maybe a long way away, I'll get a hotspot.
Okay, so we can get those off the shelf. It has to be said that the really good ones off the shelf, they're not cheap, but they're very good. We've talked about them before on TX Factor. But if you decide you want one for each mode that you're going to be using, so you can monitor them all, and I have to say in my shack I have got DMR, I have got Fusion, and I have got
Me too.
D-Star.
Yeah, so that's a lot of radios and a lot of possible hotspots and a lot of expense.
What is the most economic way then to get yourself on air with a hotspot?
Well, instead of going for one of the commercially made, like 250 quid, possibly lots of money hotspots, you could get yourself an MMDVM hotspot, multi-mode digital voice modem, because you're very aware of that online internet auction site, aren't you?
I know the one.
eBay. That's exactly where I headed to. You can buy yourself a fully assembled hotspot on eBay. It's going to cost you a little bit more. There's plenty of sellers out there that are selling them. Or you can do what I did after I bought a pre-assembled one and then took it all apart and thought, I'm going to build my own. So you buy all the component parts that you need to put your MMDVM hotspot together. It's easy.
How does it compare cost-wise though?
Well, a pre-assembled one will cost you around about £80, thereabouts, give or take a fiver or two. And all the individual component parts you should be able to get for around about 35 to 40 GBP.
And we're getting back into some real amateur radio here, aren't we? Because we're building something.
Exactly, and that's one of the things I've been doing in lockdown. I've not been wasting my time. I've been taking the lids off things and learning about digital voice modes and particularly hotspots, because it's a pretty hot topic at the moment and a lot of people are getting into doing this. So I wanted to build my own, and it's a good excuse to get the soldering iron out.
Brilliant. Well, mostly in lockdown I've been eating, as you can see. So it's good to do something now a bit more useful and put your newly learned lockdown skills into practice and to share those with you guys out there so that you can do the same thing. So run us through the parts that we need, first of all.
Okay, well, there are 5 different things you need to buy to get yourself a hotspot put together. The first of those is a Raspberry Pi, and it doesn't need to be like one of the big flash ones. It can be one of the cheap Raspberry Pi Zeros with Wi-Fi. So in fact, here we go. So this is a Raspberry Pi W, which is a Raspberry Pi Zero with Wi-Fi, but no header rail you can see across the top. I have got another one here which does have the header rail, which if you're kind of not into so much soldering, although it's not complicated, you could get yourself the one with the header rail populated board. Now there's one reason is cost as well. This is going to cost you a few more quid than the unpopulated header rail will cost you. Like these are around about 13, 14 pounds. The unpopulated header rail is just over £9. So there's like nearly 4 or 5 quid saved. But the main thing for me was a technical thing. What happens with your modem board, once we get it ready to slide on top of the Raspberry Pi, you'll see on the modem board underneath, there's the sockets ready to slide onto the header rail. And it's simple. It's literally push to fit like this. Once I get them lined up in there we go. And your hat board, your modem board, literally just slots on top of the Raspberry Pi board really simply. So you're right, it's going to save you quite a lot of soldering. But the issue here is, for me anyway, is when you add the OLED screen to the hat board on here. I'll show you what I mean. So we've got some extra pins for the OLED screen, okay. The short pins will be soldered to the bottom side of the OLED screen so that it keeps the kind of metallic edge of the connector away from the box that it sits in. The long pins go down through the hat board and they go through those holes there. Yeah, you can see straight away. In fact, this edge connector actually isn't sitting flush with the board because it's come up against an obstruction. And the obstruction there are the additional pins on the header rail, which we're not even using, and there's a lot of them there. Now, what you can do, which is what I did, you solder the connectors on here like this. These are the connectors you get with your modem. The short pins have got to go into the edge of the header rail like this, where you just drop it in like that. And once we've soldered it, of course, it's going to be nice and firm. You can see underneath there are 10 solder connections you're going to have to make. And it's not that big of a deal, to be fair. If you've got a relatively small tipped soldering iron, you're going to be able to get in there, okay, and the right pair of glasses probably. It is a little bit small, but at least put it this way, it's not surface mount.
So this is a tiny little TV screen, if you like, using OLEDs. But what are we using it for on our device?
Well, it becomes a really important visual part of the hotspot because when you switch it on, it shows you on the screen what mode you're using, and also it shows you the call sign of the station that's transmitting at that time, and it also gives you like details like your wireless LAN address as well. So it's a little info pack screen. It's only a postage stamp, but it tells you a lot of info. So that's the OLED.
What's next then? There's another little bunch of goodies here sitting on the packet they came in.
Yep. Well, this is actually pretty much the brains behind the whole operation. Although the Raspberry Pi is doing the computing side, this little board, which is an DVM modem board, is actually going to do all the internet geekery and the radio comms on here. The OLED screen then gets soldered into this board, which allows you to see what's going on. You'll see that in a little while when we assemble it, but this will get pushed, this modem board gets pushed onto the Raspberry Pi, okay, so the two are like piggybacked, and then with the screen on the front, you've got a DVM hotspot that's fully assembled and pretty much ready to go.
I suppose then there's only one more thing we need, and that is a nice neat box to put it in. So what we've got to do is cut. No, that's not going to work.
Joking.
Let's use this. It's much smarter. Where did you get this? What is it?
I got this online from a seller in China, actually. They are available in black or silver at the moment, as far as I'm aware. And it's a matchbox sized little unit that you can pull apart. And it's got some studs in the base there where you can screw your Raspberry Pi computer to the bottom of. So that sits on the base of the box. On top of that goes your modem board, okay? And then the OLED screen is on top of the modem board, and very cleverly, all of the cutouts in the box are very nicely organized so that you can see what you're doing when you push the box back together. So here, that's the OLED screen, hole. This one here is the SMA antenna adapter, hole. And this slot here shows you all the different LED activity which is available on the modem board. So you can see what mode's actually being used, DMR, D-Star, Fusion, the light comes on. It also lets you see like the power light as well. It's small to see it, but flashing lights are good because you know it's working. So yeah, everything goes in this box. And then once you've got it all assembled and electrically safe, of course, you push these two back together and you've got a little matchbox size radio that goes all around the world.
Fantastic, and it means, and this is the big bonus for me, we're going to do something that I think it's fair to say most of us in the amateur radio community these days, lockdown or no lockdown, haven't done as much as we should recently, and that is soldering.
We're not using lots of clamps and bits and pieces, so I'm just going to offer up the 2 header rail pins now, like this. Remembering that the short pins come to the top of the board. So we're going to do that, making sure they go in the right either end of the Raspberry Pi. Then I'm going to pop it down on your kitchen roll and do a little bit of propping with a special modification we've made for doing this.
The special Bic propping device.
Yeah. Now you might think, gosh, this looks really amateur and really kind of basic, but a lot of you have probably only got basic equipment. So if I can make this work safely and electrically by doing this, why not do it? Okay, so that's the Raspberry Pi finished up with. The 2 receptors for the modem board are into what's called the GPIO header rail area, and that's now ready. That's done. The Raspberry Pi is finished.
So next, it's OLED. There he is.
So yeah, we're going to need to solder the connection to the OLED screen now. So a bit more soldering involved, and place that in the right way, because those are going to be soldered into your modem board. And if you have it like the small pins at the top, you've got lots of clearance for the box and no electrical mismatch. So I'm just going to do some soldering now. All right, so that's the OLED screen sorted and ready to be placed or soldered into your modem board now. 4 simple connections done.
Okay, more soldering then.
So we're going to grab the modem board right here. And then we're going to offer up the OLED screen to the modem board, and you can see right here where it says OLED screen and all the different power connections. This board is going to slot through those holes like so. And if I flip it upside down, you'll see that it's really clearly away from anything else, and certainly away from anything on the Raspberry Pi, which it's going to sit on top of. So we need to do some more soldering now. 4 little solder joints, and then it's job done for the modem board.
Nice work. The OLED screen soldered into position here on your hat board. Is that it? Can we put away the soldering iron now?
Wait a minute. You're so impatient. We've done quite a bit of soldering, but there is one more thing we need to do. And it's the rather important aspect.
Being as this is an amateur radio project, it's the bit that makes the radio work.
Do you think we need an aerial?
I think we probably do. Or
I think we
an
best.
antenna, if you prefer, whichever way. I know
Yeah.
people like to argue about that. So that's an SMA connector, is it?
It certainly is, yeah. It looks like a very tall one, doesn't it? But it needs to poke out through the top of your modem box, nice and clearly. So this is the last bit of soldering we're going to do today, by the way. So it goes through there. If I flip it over, where you'll see all the other pins. Can you see that there?
Yeah.
That's your last 5 solder connections we've got to make today. All right, so that's the SMA connector soldered onto the modem board.
And well and truly soldered in. You've got some fairly substantial solder blobs here, but there's a reason for that, because this needs to be a very mechanically sound connection, doesn't it? That connector is going to take a bit of wear and tear. If the aerial's plugged in, taken off, it might get knocked.
Yeah, I guess it could be the weak link in a modem, because it's the biggest, pokiest out thing that's sat on top of your modem. So it's RF as well, although it's only really 10 milliwatts. Who wants a poor RF connection? So yeah, nice Cadbury's cream egg sized blobs on the back there. All we've got to do now is put all this stuff together and make it work. But first of all, we need to get the Raspberry Pi into the base of your metal box. That's the first thing that goes in, and that's going to sit on the bottom of the box here, like so. Now when you buy a metal box like this, there should be some spacers and some metal screws supplied with it. And my handy assistant is just about to bring those into shot right here. There's some spacer. There's one spacer.
Long screw.
Long screw. Except guess what?
What?
Right now I need the short screws.
You would.
Typical.
Okay, there we go.
So
short screw.
What I always suggest when you do the Raspberry Pi board installation is start with the small screws at the back of the box to anchor the Raspberry Pi in place. And you'll see the reason for doing the small screws at the back first. Now this is super fiddly. Right, so that goes in there like so. So it's going to drop that one in there as well.
So that's 2 screws in. Those are holding the Raspberry Pi into the box. What next?
Absolutely. So next we're going to offer up the modem board to sit on top of the Raspberry Pi. Now you remember we've done all the soldering already, so it is basically push to fit here. And that's going to go, once I get my angles of dangle right, it's going to go, it's a little bit of a stiff fit. There you go. Now look at that.
But we're still not finished because I guess we've got those 2 long screws and the spacers to use. They must have a roll.
They do indeed, and they're actually going to sit. You see here we've got a big gap here now.
Yep.
They're going to sit between the top of the modem board and the Raspberry Pi a long way below, and it just kind of keeps everything like together and firm and
stable.
Stable, that's it. Now this is even more fiddliness. You offer that screw to the receptacle hole.
There we go.
But pull it back a bit.
Right,
no, pull it back a bit. He's always too quick. There you go. Look at that.
Hey, look at that.
Look at that. Now, you may now introduce the last and final screw. Oh, let me put the spacer in. There we go.
Did I miss?
No, I think that was a good shot.
Oh,
with a little bit of wobbling from me.
There we are.
We have 2 screws lined up. So the last thing to do now is to screw those
tight.
Up tight. There we go. You can feel it gripping up now. And that's it. Now, all being well, we just have to snap the lid back on this box.
Yep.
But one final thing, because you want the OLED screen to look its very best and very prettiest when you fire it up. We've got a protective screen on there, so I'm just going to pull that one off right now. Good time to do it. Stumpy fingers are the best. There we go. Okay, job done. That's everything in place and screwed together. All we've got to do now to finish off the assembly work is snap the lid back in place, and we've got a finished modem box. So let's do that. The modem lid. Now these are quite, from experience of doing a few of these are pretty stiff, but there is kind of good reason for that. I'm going to have to just swing it around a little bit and bend the metal into place. This is kind of how it goes. So don't worry if you need a bit of grunt and a bit of heave ho. You could call on a friend, but it's almost a one-handed job. But do be careful when you snap all this together. Do be careful that the screen and particularly the SMA connector, that's the first thing that's going to come through. Just be careful that that is kind of lined up. There you go. See how that's kind of like sliding down like that? And you can hear it clicking all the way, right? That is the little edge connectors on the modem box slotting into the receptacle of the lid. So that ain't going to go anywhere now. That's the lid pretty much firmly on top. It's clipped in place. And there's one other thing we need to do to finish the assembly of this Hotspot board. And what do you reckon that is?
Apply some power and put the antenna on it.
There you go. So you put the antenna on.
Oh,
Your job.
I get to do all the technical stuff. There we go.
That means if the SWR's high, I can blame you.
There we are.
Ideal. And that is your DVM Hotspot board from pieces to finished item.
Thank you for showing us how to build it. And if you want to find out how to get all the component parts for this, you'll find all that info in the show notes at txfactor.co.uk. And look out for our other video where we'll tell you how you can program up the Raspberry Pi in this so that you can use the Pi-Star software and get the Hotspot on the air.
And all that will be in our next episode, full details on the TX Factor website. But now, our bundle of 3 RSGB publications to be given away, and this time we have QRP Basics, the 3rd edition, now in colour, the classic book from the late Reverend George Dobbs and updated by Professor Roger Green, has everything you need to know about doing more with less. The ubiquitous RSGB Yearbook for 2022, a classic in its own right. And Dream Big and Dare to Fail, an encyclopedia of de-expedition excellence from the IOTA operations manager Cesar Trifu, a must-read for lovers of de-expeditions. All 3 books can be yours if your entry is first out of the TX Factor Shack Hat. It's free to enter, and full details, terms and conditions are on our website. Good luck! The much-awaited Icom ID-52 transceiver finally arrived in the UK late last year, and one happened to land in Bob's shack. Find out how this much sought after handy fared after this. The Radio Society of Great Britain is proud to be a sponsor of TX Factor. As licensed radio amateurs, we need to be aware of the effects of our transmissions in terms of the strength of the electromagnetic fields, the EMF that they produce, and the impact they may have on people in different parts of the antenna beam pattern. New regulations from Ofcom require all UK radio amateurs to comply with the international guidelines for limiting exposure to electromagnetic fields. The purpose of the EMF licence condition is to ensure that members of the general public are not present in areas where the EMF limits may be exceeded when transmitting. Depending on the frequency and the type of antenna, the highest field strengths may be close to the antenna, as in large HF antennas, or further afield after the beam has been formed, as for microwave dishes. In all cases, keeping the antenna out of the reach of people avoids potential problems from touching the antenna. Radio amateurs need to understand possible effects of exceeding EMF limits, assess potential EMF exposure, and keep records to demonstrate their compliance with the licence conditions. The RSGB has a simplified guide to help in this important aspect of EMF compliance, and has provided tools to demonstrate compliance using the RSGB calculator or pre-assessed equipment configurations. The amateur radio licence syllabus has also been updated with questions relating to EMF compliance. Check the RSGB website for guidance, help and videos on all aspects of EMF exposure.
Hello and welcome to our intro to the new Icom baby, the ID-52. Now I've been waiting to get my hands on one of these for an awfully long time, so it's really nice to finally have it here to look at and to share with you. So this is the ID-52 Handy. It's an ID-52E because this is a European model, and as always a slight difference between the frequency coverage of the E model and the A model. First of all, let's just have a look at the battery, because this battery is the standard battery that comes with it, and also in the box you get the charger that goes with this. There is a little wrist strap as well, which I've not put on, that comes with it, and you get the basic manual. Now I would recommend that you download the advanced manual as well. You can get that as a PDF, very easy, free to download from Icom, and you can put that on your tablet or on your computer, and that's going to really help when you're trying to get really in deep with the functions, because this radio has a lot of functions. So the battery's really easy clip-on job, like that, and as you can see, good solid fit. That's not going to come off or shake loose. And that sort of reflects the whole solid feel of this transceiver actually. So let's switch it on. Our power switch is this mauvey coloured button here. And as it boots up, we get an indication of the battery voltage, and then we're straight into the screen, which is where I last left it, which is monitoring my local FM 2 meter repeater at the top, and at the bottom here we've got some D-Star going on. Now, I always refer to a dual watch radio, these two bits, as VFO-A and VFO-B, but in fact Icom refer to them in the manual as band A and band B, so we'll go with their nomenclature and hopefully that won't be too confusing. So interestingly, there is a difference between the frequency coverage of band A and band B. So on the ID-52 European version, on the A band, the received coverage is 108 to 174 on VHF, guaranteed they say only between 144 and 146, but I think they just mean that's where it's the most sensitive. And then on UHF it's 225 megs to 479 megs. Now the B band starts at a different place on its VHF coverage because it runs from 137 megs to 174, and then on UHF it's 375 to 479, so it's actually different. And it does mean, for example, if you wanted to listen to airband frequencies, and niftily they have improved the airband coverage because it now does cover the UHF airbands as well as the VHF airbands, but if you were going to listen, say, to my local RNS Coldrose Tower here, which is around 122 100, you'd have to put that in or listen to it. It'll be in the memory, but if you're going to listen to it, you've got to listen to it on the A band because the B band doesn't start until 137, so you're not going to hear anything on the B band. A useful thing to bear in mind when you're using the two different bands on here. So looking down the side here, first of all, we've got the push to talk button. It's got that nice little ribbing on it, which enables you to find it easily by feel. And there's this little ridge here, so you can easily get your finger onto the PTT button. Underneath it is a button marked squelch. Now we often get these on our handies. If you push that in, it breaks the squelch open, so you can hear a weak signal that's maybe below your squelch setting. But also it serves a double function, because if you hold that in whilst turning the top knob here, you're going to adjust the squelch level. You can probably see the number changing down here. The first level is auto, or we can actually put a squelch level ourselves. So I'm putting it in at level 3. Next down is the on-off button, this little purpley thing here, obvious what that does. Then underneath it, we've got a little rubber waterproofing flap, and here is a socket for a miniature SD card. We haven't got one in it at the moment. We'll pop one in a moment, because it's a very useful thing to have in there, because it enables some of our other features. Just before we do that though, I'll show you the connectors on the other side. At the top here, behind the rubber flap, our microphone and speaker socket, so we can plug in a speaker mic there. Or of course you can connect to a Bluetooth headset. So if you've already got one of those, or if you purchase one to go with this, that's really useful, particularly if you're using it portable, because you can have it on your belt and just use the Bluetooth headset for transmit and receive, or of course in the car. That's very useful as well. Now at the bottom we have one more little flap here. If I pull that one open, we've got the socket where we plug in the charger and a USB socket. So when it's plugged into your computer, it will be charging, and also of course that connection very, very useful indeed for using the free software that's available from Icom, so that you can program the radio and adjust all your settings with your PC. Let's have a look now at how you navigate your way around the radio. And one of the things I really like about the Icom radios that we've had recently, the 9700, the IC7300 and the 705, is the way you navigate through the menus is very instinctive. You can find your way around quite easily. You don't find yourself going down menu rabbit holes that you can't get out of. And this radio is just the same, and it makes it quite easy for you to find your way around. Now, the first button that we're going to look at is one that's got a bit of a clue on it, because it says menu, so it's a very good place to start. So if we press that, we have a bunch of icons appear that would look quite familiar to anybody who has an IC7300 or a 9700. The difference is, of course, this isn't a touch screen. We navigate around by using this, which will go right, left, down, or up. And if we want to go into one of these, we click the middle button, which is enter. We could use this to perhaps record our CQ call. When you want to come out of a menu item you're in, you just press left on here and it steps you back out of it. We have FM radio. Interestingly, there are 500 FM radio memories in 26 groups. So if you travel a lot, you'll be able to put all your favourite FM stations from around the world in there, I should think. We've got scope here, and if we click that, we now have a band scope, and you can see we are scanning the 2 meter band. I'm going to turn the radio off now, because I did mention earlier on that we had an SD card slot and we've got an SD card in it yet, so we'll put that right now. I'll open that little flap, and the point about the miniature SD card is they are not lying. That is very small indeed, and they're very keen to point out in the Icom manual that it's very important that it's terminals facing forward. Trouble with these is that if you're a bit ham-fisted like me, you can put them in the wrong way around and think, oh, that's not going, and give it a good old shove, and that won't be good either for the workings of the radio or the SD card. So we'll put him in there, get him the right way round, poke with the fingernail, bing, there we go, that's in. And make sure, for waterproofing purposes, we press that little rubber seal home. Something you can do with this, which I think is a really neat little feature, is you can share pictures with other users. A couple of ways you can get the pictures into the system. You can connect via Bluetooth to another device and put the pictures in that way, or you can put pictures directly onto the SD card, but once they're in there you can share them. So you can select picture in the menu. The RX box would have our receive image history in it, as we haven't got any. There's nothing in it at the moment. You have to select the picture size, so you've got different picture sizes, and any images that you save on your card that you want to send to other people have to be in these sizes. They have to be JPEGs, and you can also set the quality that you send them in between those three options there. I can show you the picture that I could transmit if I want to, because I did pop one on the SD card. I mean, who wouldn't want to receive a picture of that little fellow? That's Toby, my Westie, and that picture was taken when we were out portable. Okay, let's scroll a bit further across on our menu page here, and we've got this picture of a spanner and a screwdriver, the universal symbol for settings. Well, we've got a whole range of things in here that we can adjust. So these are a lot of the adjustments that you can make in relation to everything from your display. So you can sort out the background color. If we don't like white, we could have black. I prefer white, I think. We can adjust the contrast. We can adjust the busy LED so that it's on or off. Just many different things. So as you can see, with all of these menus, it's very easy to get to the top point in the menu and then scroll down and find the things you're actually looking to adjust. There are so many different settings that you can change in here. One of them that's handy for me is not everybody wants the beep confirmation every time you press a button. So it's there at the moment, but I could turn that off. Sounds, let's have a look. Oh, key touch beep. Oh, that's better. It's always very useful to know where you are, and with this radio you'll always know where you are because it's got GPS built in, and also anybody you talk to will know where you are as well. So let's switch the GPS on because we haven't done that yet. So we click on that, GPS set, GPS select, it's off at the moment, so we'll switch it on, and then if I step backwards here, back to our home screen if you like, you'll see just at the top here there's a little satellite icon and it's flashing on and off, and that means it's in the process of acquisition of satellites. It's trying to see the right number of satellites it needs to work out where you are. Back in the home screen we notice that our satellite has stopped flashing at the top, which means that it's acquired the necessary satellites to get our location. So if we now go back into the menu, click on GPS, we could click on GPS information, and it now tells us our latitude and longitude, and it also tells us which satellites we've acquired. So we can click on position, and that's the information that would actually display when we're having a D-Star QSO. That's what pops up on the screen at the other end. Our menu home screen has got items on it here on the main screen, but if we scroll down one more, there's one little one all on its own at the bottom, but it's a very important one, memory. And this is where all of that information about the UK repeaters and your D-Star repeaters and everything else, that's where it all lives. And luckily the radio here in the UK comes with it all programmed in, which is absolutely brilliant. If you want to add more things, you can, because the way that the memory is divided up, it's divided up into groups, and you can create new groups and put new memories or new frequencies into the memory. The easiest way of doing that is, as I said before, with the PC software that you can download for free from Icom. You can do it through the radio, and if it's just to add one channel or tweak something within a memory, that's quite easy and quick to do, but really, mostly, you're going to want to edit this stuff on the computer. And I'll tell you for why. There's a lot of it in there. So if we click on that and we look at memory channels, we can see that it's got quite a lot in it already, and this is what it came with out of the box. So when this came to us, it already had the UHF repeaters for the UK, nicely arranged in alphabetical order, and the VHF repeaters as well. Now you notice here I've got, and these are the groups, we've got group numbers down the left hand side, and you can arrange your memories in groups. So that's the first group is the UHF analog repeaters A to J, second group the analog UHF K to Z, and that all follows on logically. Then I added another group because I thought it would be handy to have just the 2 meter channels in there, including the simplex channels, so that if I was somewhere where I didn't know what I wanted to listen to, I could just put a scan on and scan across all the 2 meter channels. And I did the same with the 70 SEMS channels. And also I added airband as well and put in a couple of my favorite local airband channels. And of course, as you can see, these are all blank down here. and plenty more room to add more groups and more collections of frequencies, perhaps some marine band channels or whatever you fancy. Next down on this list is call channels. This is quite handy because, have a look here, we've got 4 channels that we could program just for stuff we want to be able to go straight to. So there's 2 for 2 meters, 2 for 70 sems. So we could put in, I don't know, the VHF calling channel, one of our favorite VHF repeaters, maybe the same for UHF as well. Next down is repeater list, and this has got some memory groups starting with number 1, which is the UHF D-Star repeaters in the UK. Kindly put in for you, ready to use. And then at number 2, we've got the VHF D-Star repeaters, and then we've got the analog ones again. It's interesting that they're in 2 places in this radio, but we've got a list of the UHF analog repeaters in the UK and the FM ones, and at the bottom here, OpenSpot. Now that wasn't in the radio when I took it out of the box. I added that one myself. Really easy to do, to add the details of my OpenSpot so that I'm ready to use that on D-Star. So we'll go later on into an explanation as how easy it is to add that on your computer. Right, I'm going to step back to our home screen now, and here we are back in our A band and B band, and show you now how we actually navigate our way around the channels we've got. We've seen how much we've got in the memory there, but how do we actually use them? Well, this is where our quick button comes into its own. So we're in the A band at the moment, so we're using the top one. We can switch between those just by pressing this button here, like that. So that's going to be which one of those we're using for transmit. So if we hold it, press it and hold it as well, instead of having split A and B, we just get the last thing that we had selected as main as the only thing that's displayed. And then we can flick between them. So we can have them taking up the whole screen like that, flicking between them. Or if I hold it in again, we have our split screen with A at the top and B at the bottom. Well, if we start on our A band here, this is where we're going to find the quick button. Very useful indeed. If I now press quick, it gives me the option to make a number of changes to anything that's happening in this channel. So I could change this particular channel as to whether it's duplex off or duplex minus or plus. I could put a tone in. I could change, while I'm in this, the steps that I'm going to use. I'm actually in memory at the moment, so there's not much point in changing the tuning steps in memory. But if I were to press this button here, which says VFO or megahertz, I press that once and I'm now in VFO. And again, if I go to quick, I could change the tuning steps for the VFO to whatever I want there. And then rotating this top knob here is going to take me through the VFO. And back here we've got MR and MW. If I do one press on that, it takes me back into the memories for A. And then again, turning this knob at the top is stepping me through all those memories. Mind you, we've got quite a lot of stuff in there, as we saw. So how can I go to the particular thing that I want? Well, again, while I'm in A, which was set up in analog FM, that's where our quick button comes in. And I can step up to group select, hit enter, and now we're seeing what we saw before, if you remember, when we were looking in the memory section. So there's our UHF analog repeaters, A to J, UHF K to Z, VHF A to K, and VHF L to Z. And I could just click on whatever I want. So for example, if I want to go to my local repeater, is GB3SI, so that should be in here somewhere. So we've gone just into that section now, and there we go, GB3SI Helston. Obviously, one of the big selling points of this radio is its D-Star capabilities. So let's have a look at those now. First of all, in order to fire up the D-Star, we're going to use our up, down, left and right. But instead of doing the short clicks, which we do when we're navigating around, we'll see it says DR at the bottom here, which will take us into digital radio mode. But we press it and hold it, and there we are. Well, we'll leave the SI Helston repeater on A. We'll press this and we'll make B our main now. And I can go into quick mode from here and I can select a group. So I could pick any of the UK UHF D-Star repeaters if I'm in range of one of those, and just turning this top knob is going to flick me through all of those, and so we'd be instantly sorted out for getting into the repeaters. Or I could step down to here, which is where I've put my open spot in as group number 5, just one channel in group number 5. If you had a number of different hotspots, you could put them all in that group, or you could put them in different groups, but I've only got the one open spot 2. There it is. I click on that and we are now in my open spot. And if we step up to 2 and then click on the center button here and press enter, we've got all our various options to get our D-Star QSO going. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details and the ins and outs of how you make D-Star work, because that's a subject in its own right. But just to show how quickly you could get going, I'm already on my open spot channel. So if we go down to your call sign, it gives us a list of reflectors in here and other options as well. So that reflector is a very popular one that's always busy. So let's select that. And if I now give a little burst on the PTT, here we go.
Open spot connected to REF001 Charlie.
I mentioned earlier on that you can use a Bluetooth headset with this radio, and to set it up for Bluetooth, you go back into menu, you go into set and to Bluetooth set, and here we can do all the jiggery pokery that we need to do to make it connect with a Bluetooth device. But you can connect not only with a headset, but you can actually connect with a mobile device. So here on my iPhone, I've got some handy dandy software which I downloaded for free from Icom. And you will find this in either the iOS App Store or on Google Play. And we've got the Share Pictures page open here, but you can control a lot of the functions of the radio from your phone, all via Bluetooth. And you can also do it via a USB connection as well. There is no doubt in my mind that to get the best out of this radio, you need to download the programming software. So what I did is I Googled Icom CS52 software. Up came the Icom UK page. Here's the download here. And then once downloaded and opened, it looks like this. Now, there's nothing in any of the channels at the moment. And that's because the first thing we're going to do is import the settings that the radio came with. And the radio comes with an awful lot of stuff already in it. So to do that, we click on Clone and we click Read. Now all the information in the radio has been read to the software, we'll find that these are now populated. So if we click on memory channels, we can see we've got all the analog repeaters neatly broken up alphabetically. And if we go down to digital, we'll find we've got all the digital repeaters as well. So we've got a full repeater list there. Now, what if we want to add something extra? Well, I think the first thing to do for safety would be to save what we've got here, which is everything we've imported from the radio. If we archive that, then if we make some mistake later, we can always go back to the settings that the radio came with. So that's simply save as, and I'm going to save it as archive. There we go. Now, having done that, we can then make any additions we want. So I thought I'd put the UHF and 70SEMS channels in as a group in their own right. So to add a group, double click here, and that group's going to be called 4. And we could manually put all the frequencies in here, but here's a handy tip. I've got an IC9700 that I've already programmed these into, and you can't take the IC9700 ICF file and just import it into this software, but if you export it as a CSV file, you can then import it. So if I go to, and I've done that earlier, if I go to import, now this is very important, don't import all, otherwise you'll overwrite everything, just import into this group, this new group I've created, which is 4. There's my 2-meter channel CSV file, and boom, there they are. And we can now name that. So I'm going to call that, logically, 2-meter channels. There we go. And we'll do the same for the 70SEMS, because I also copied those as a CSV file from my IC9700. So if we go to that group there, and we're going to go to import group. And now they're all there, which is very handy. So let's just edit the name there, and that becomes 70 centimeter channels. There we go. And maybe I would like to add some of my favorite airband channels. So I can add another group here, and I'm going to put these in manually. So I happen to know that one of the ones that I monitor regularly is a tower frequency, and the operating frequency is 122 100. This is TS here is the channel spacing. Well, for this particular malarkey, it's going to be that. And of course, as it's airband, it's AM. So there we go. We can save those as well. And we can put in some more in due course, but we'll just call that airband, and we'll put in some other favorite channels, and that basically is how you do it. And likewise, if you want to add anything in the digital section, and I did actually add my open spot. I put that directly into the radio. It wasn't too difficult to do into the radio, which is why it's pulled it out when we've written everything from the radio. But basically, that was all I had to put in, that information. It's DV simplex, it's called open spot, that's its frequency, it's DV, use from yes, position none, so we don't fill in the latitude and longitude. And that's all done. So once we've got all our new settings, let's save those as something else. So we won't save that into the archive file. We'll save that as Bob's settings. There we go. And we can then import them back into the radio, and it will overwrite everything that's in the radio at the moment. So we just click write. And there we are, job done. By the way, because the radio comes with all these useful repeaters pre-programmed in, it has a very handy little feature, which is you can ask it to find a near repeater, because if you've got the GPS on, it knows where you are. So you just say find near repeater, and it will intelligently look up here based on your location and tell you which repeaters are nearest. And you can ask it to search all, or just digital, or just analog. That's our brief introduction to the ID-52. What do we think of the radio in overall terms? Well, it's a good solid feel to it. It's got that robust Icom build. It's really good, really solid. And as long as you remember to put all your little rubber flaps down properly and make sure they're sealed, it's waterproof too. It can last to a depth of 1 metre for 30 minutes apparently, without coming to harm, which is really useful for someone like me whose last handheld died of being dropped in a canal. True story. The screen is great, a really bright, clear display. You can adjust the contrast, you can change the background colour if you want, and it's really easy to see. Then when you go into the menu here so that you can see all those coloured icons, you get the real benefit of the colour screen, especially when we were looking at our little picture of Toby earlier on. Also, I think one of the great things about this, and I've mentioned this before and I go on about this with the recent Icom radios, is just the ease of getting through the menus, the ease of finding what you're looking for. But I do like the way they construct their menus, which make it quite clear where the top is, where the thing is that you're adjusting. It's easy to find, easy to get back out of those menus. And even if you're not quite sure where to find it, when you look it up in the manual, it will be a straightforward set of instructions to get to that place. So all in all, I think it's easy to use. It's solid radio, good 5-watt output on the high power position. I think this is going to be good company for me on my walking trips with Toby.
Oh, he's so cute. Toby the dog, I mean, not Bob. Well, that's it for our first episode of 2022. Thanks to all our loyal viewers for sticking with us during the pandemic. We'll be back for more TX Factor episodes in the near future. In the meanwhile, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our website for all our past episodes and the latest updates. So, from all the team, thanks for watching. 7-3. The Radio Society of Great Britain is proud to sponsor TX Factor.